Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to present and be part of this forum. In order to tackle this topic, I thought that I'd start by providing some context by looking at how we were in Guyana before COVID in relation to our postgraduate specialist training programs and international partnerships, with an emphasis on the surgical and anesthesia programs. Then I'll look at where we are now with a view to discussing how international partners can support us. Now, when I say a view from Guyana, I really mean my view as Dr. Alexandra Harvey, Director of Medical Education, in charge of postgraduate programs here in Guyana since about 5 years. And when I say Guyana, just to remind you that I mean this place here, the only English-speaking country in South America, a country about the size of the UK, but with only about 2% of the population. I won't even try and compare it to vast Canada. And specifically in Guyana, I mean this location here, the capital Georgetown on the coast. And more specifically, I mean this place here, the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation, or GPHC, the only tertiary referral hospital in the country, where all our postgraduate programs are conducted in affiliation with our University of Guyana, and where they have kindly given me an office and educational department called the Institute of Health Science Education, or IHSE, somewhere down behind here. So I'm not talking about this Guyana full of jungles, waterfalls, and sweet scenery, according to the words of one of our popular songs. Although this Guyana does exist, and you really can get that close to our famous Kaitio Falls, the world's largest single drop waterfall at 741 feet, 5 times higher than Niagara. And that's the plug I have for my country. Our postgraduate program started in 2006, initially with the 2-year diploma in general surgery, with the help of Dr. Cameron. But by 2019, my index year for before COVID, so 2019 BC, we had 13 programs across various specialties, 6 of which were between surgery, anesthesia, and obstetrics, as highlighted. But by 2019, all of the 2-year diplomas had now been expanded into our 4-year specialist MED programs, and general surgery diploma had been phased out. So I just put that in red there. All these programs had a basic need, which is that they required external support from outside of Guyana, some to develop the program, some to start them, to teach in the classroom and clinical areas, and to provide examiners for our final exams, which help lend credibility to our processes, and to help with our research development, as all specialty MED graduates are required to complete a scholarly project. We also needed external support for our trainees to get the exposure to experiences and technology not available in Guyana, but which it's required for them to do to achieve the level of competency and skill as specialists. International partnerships provided this support for our basic need. We had in Trinidad, in the Caribbean, in the US, and the UK, and in Canada, where we had partnerships with McMaster, CASIF, CAGS, and a group out of Halifax called Micro Research. So they provided the support by sending volunteers, usually for about 2 weeks at a time, and allowing trainees to do rotations in their centers. We considered ourselves really lucky to have these partnerships, but there were, of course, some challenges with this partnership model. Not to bite the hand that feeds me, but I would say some were expected, like the first 3, related to travel logistics. Once you're having people traveling, you expect that. Finding volunteers, matching appropriate volunteers to the curriculum. Well, these are admin issues we could expect. And obtaining overseas rotations, because we know we're competing with the residents at your centers. But the last 2 in bold were not so much expected. Some of our international partners that came as volunteers would teach, but were a bit evaluation and paperwork shy. And so obtaining written student assessments and external examiner reports from the volunteers sometimes was a bit of a challenge. And the last one, maintaining training standards, balancing volunteer desire to accommodate cultural norms against establishing or maintaining training standards. It's a bit of a mouthful, but let me see if I can give you an example of what I mean. In chatting with a volunteer, especially in the early days, he mentioned that, of course, Dr. Harvey, the residents came late to their shift And I said, why, of course? He looked a bit surprised, but replied that he had noted how things were done here in Guyana, where persons arrived late for events or to work, and it was no problem. Nobody said and told him anything. And he was actually right. But I had to let him know that even if this was so in our society, it's definitely not acceptable in a training program where we prize professionalism and professional behaviors. So I urged him to do what he knows is correct in terms of admonishing those delinquents and help us to develop better practices and higher standards. But despite these challenges, by the end of 2019, in surgery, anesthesia, and obs and gynae, we had graduated 61 residents over the 13 years since 2006, and we still had 55 residents in training out of the total 134 that we had. But then COVID came. And for us, it was the same day that WHO declared the COVID-19 as a pandemic. It had effects on our training, as in many of us all over the world. For us, it meant that we had no volunteer visits, no volunteers teaching. Some of our international partners actually left us because they had their, obviously, their own problems. And then there was a constantly changing situation. We stopped our programs, then we restarted them. Residents were actually redeployed to other areas. They got ill, faculty got ill, and of course, then their family members, they had to look after. So, but in this time, we were able to start back using Zoom. That was our preferred platform. And that really proliferated during this time. So the volunteers from overseas could actually start teaching. But this is obviously in the context of the fear and the fatigue and exhaustion and mental health challenges posed by COVID. So where are we now? But I want to emphasize that now for us is not post-COVID. Now is a new normal, which is ever changing. So now our basic new normal post-COVID needs are equal to our basic pre-COVID needs, I would say. But our current challenges are not the same. So what are our current challenges? Well, once travel restarts, I guess we will still have our old challenges related to travel logistics and admin issues. And the international partnerships, I believe, can help by continuing your usual understanding. But in relation to the paperwork and maintaining training standards, our international partners can provide support by, I think, highlighting these issues with volunteers and seek advice from myself or from the program directors if things seem odd in relation to training standards. We do have new challenges which are related not only to the COVID situation, but also to the fact that we are emerging from this crisis with more developed training needs. In terms of the COVID-related challenges, we again have to address travel as we have the added challenge of health issues, quarantine, and vaccination considerations, and so on. We are making all efforts to be COVID-friendly, if there is such a thing, and COVID compliant, but international partners can provide support by just letting us know what you would like from us in this regard. We also have a challenge with the overseas training rotations, because during this time, there's been a significant decline in these rotations. We only had 3 this year. In 2019, we had 27. And this is a basic need. So we ask that you continue efforts to get back our training spaces with a view to actually increasing them. And I'll show you the need for this increase shortly. In terms of Zoom, we are using this forum bigly, as my residents say, but we have a limited number of accounts. So we ask if you could use your own when possible. And the different time zones can play havoc with scheduling. So please take this into account when scheduling in accordance with our academic times and be flexible. Because of staff shortages, we tend to have limited flexibility here at present. Another challenge with Zoom here is the increase in no-shows for many reasons. But it's internet connectivity issues, the resident has actually been redeployed because of the shortages, sometimes with illness, and this affects us in terms of scheduling. So I'm wondering if maybe more pre-recorded lectures sent beforehand could be useful and used by volunteers to at least partly address this. A big challenge for us in the surgical and anesthesia specialties related to COVID is that our trainees are emerging with less or limited practical clinical experience. And I wanted to show you here where you can see the marked decrease in elective cases from pre-COVID compared to 2020. And it's basically the same now, though efforts have been made to restart electives. There was no change in the obstetrics as all the electives became emergencies anyway, so we didn't stop them. But for the other specialties, the skills gained during electives is gone. For instance, in gynae with elective hysterectomies, with surgery, just hernia repairs. And in anesthesia, a big one for us is airway management. And this slide is just to emphasize that the number of emergencies did not change much, but it may not be the appropriate type for all trainee levels. And it's difficult to plan appropriate trainee experiences using emergency experience alone. So because of the limited and less appropriate clinical experiences posed by COVID, I wonder if international partners can support us by increasing simulation efforts, maybe even using screen simulation, video links, and so on. In other words, help us to increase the use of technology in a clinical setting, just as we have recently done in the classroom via Zoom. We already have a camera system set up in our operating theater, in one of them at least, but need to explore the use of this more, I think. And in relation to our challenges, due to our more developed training needs, now we have more graduates, 26 more to be precise. In fact, we are emerging from COVID with 87 graduates in the surgical and anesthesia specialties compared to the 61 we had in 2019 BC. And we have added a new surgical specialty, ENT, that you see at the top here. And that was done with the help of a partnership in London, Ontario. So that now we have 70 residents in training in surgery, anesthesia, and obstetrics compared to the 55 that we had in 219 BC. More graduates mean we have more persons who can help with teaching and training, as well as having leadership and managerial roles in our programs. So international partners can help us in terms of faculty development and leadership training. And with more graduates, we also now have the luxury and the challenge of looking at career development and subspecialty training. And this is now a practical concern. So we ask that international partners, they can support us by offering fellowship training help. And we prefer the model of doing as much as possible here in Guyana with the added necessary components by visits to your centers. So we would ask for a new type of volunteer to help with fellowship curriculum development and to teach and supervise in Guyana at this level. The final challenge I have here is related to our desire to be stronger in the research area. So I ask for your support in providing research supervisors and research mentors so we can develop in this area, as well as perhaps access to specialty journals. So overall, my view is that if we can keep on working together, we'll do as well as we did pre-COVID BC. For me, the partnership that really worked was because of good communication in its widest sense, together with the ability to respond to each other's needs. We have had good partnerships here in Canada, and I truly hope this will continue as we settle in and try to overcome the new challenges posed during these abnormal, new normal times. Thank you.